Oh, well, welcome everyone to what month is it? We are in August, our August abortion healing webinar. My name's Lisa Rowe. I have the honor and privilege of serving as the CEO here at Support After Abortion. And if you were with us last month, or you had the opportunity of watching the recording, we brought to light the topic of ethics. And it really came from you and the conversation we had the month prior about where do we sit ourselves if we have this experience or this experience? When am I outside of my lane? When am I inside of my lane? And it really forced us into further contemplation. And so we really took it to the next level and believe we created the first ever code of ethics for abortion healing providers. So if you haven't had a chance to watch that webinar, I strongly encourage that you go back and watch it. And this month is going to follow in suit, and we are going to be talking about some of the protocol that comes as a result of those ethics. And one of the strongest protocols that we feel is most appropriate for us here at Support After Abortion and for you is the topic of group rules. How do we facilitate groups without rules? It's very difficult. And some of you may have rules that you've maybe kind of had here in your heart or your head and haven't really verbalized. And so you just kind of go with the flow. Others of you have really strong rules, but have a hard time implementing them. And some of you know that rules are important. You have some, but you're still kind of pondering, is it the right rules? Are we doing it with best practices in mind? So without further ado, we are going to bring this topic to you, and I am going to be supported in discussing this topic with my colleagues, Heidi Enlow and Karen Barbito. So before we jump in any further, I'm going to allow Karen to introduce herself briefly, and then we'll allow Heidi to do the same. Karen?
Hello, y'all. My name is Karen Barbito. I'm the Special Projects Manager for Support After Abortion. Happy to be here today with you.
Thanks, Karen. And Karen, you have the Guinness World Record here at Support After Abortion for leading the most amount of groups. So she really does come unparalleled. So we're really grateful that you're here with us. And Heidi, would you do us the honor?
Hi, everyone. I'm Heidi Enlow, and I am the case manager here at Support After Abortion.
Awesome. And you really have taken the reins over helping to train our volunteers and making sure that they're equipped with these rules. So you really understand how valuable they are from both leading groups, but more for equipping leaders to lead the groups. Yes. So why is this so important, and why would this be our next topic? I kind of alluded to that, and I'm going to let Karen and Heidi share from their perspectives why it's so important that we talk about group rules today. But before we start, I just want to talk to you from my heart as somebody who's led a multitude of groups. I'd rather, as a clinician, and just because I say I'm a clinician does not mean that you can't grasp what I'm sharing today. But what I love about groups is when somebody can realize that they are not alone in this journey. One-on-one counseling is great, one-on-one mentoring is great, but there's something really special that takes place inside of a group when facilitated well. I've seen both not well facilitated groups and really well done facilitated groups. And when they are well done, they can be a tremendous asset to our clients. And so we really want to help you get to that place, because when a client can see themselves in another client across the way and they realize that they're really burdened with the same thing, or one client has experienced something a little bit before the next client, there's something remarkable that takes place in that connection between those two clients. So I really want you to leave today feeling like groups could be a very powerful place for you to continue doing the amazing work that you're called to do. Karen, why are groups so important to you, and maybe the best practices in groups? Why is that top of mind today?
The guidelines you're asking me about, Lisa, why do we have them?
Yep. Why are they important to you, and what makes the guidelines extra important?
I think there's three areas that guidelines can potentially wrap their arms around. And one is confidentiality, creating a safe place for people to share vulnerably, to talk about something that they really don't want to talk about. It's so private. To establish some boundaries, again, so everybody is respected and has their turn to share, isn't giving advice, those kind of boundaries that help to really create a super dynamic of the participants within the group, because they all feel equal and able to share and not judged. And then finally, I think one of the things that probably is most important to me is to get the buy-in of the participant, that this is a commitment. The group is a commitment. It means a lot, not only for their own healing, but for the participants' healing as well.
Yeah.
And so that's why we have that's why they're important to me.
Yeah. And personally, as you've led groups, Karen, considering these three things, how has that helped you as a facilitator of the groups?
I think it really, I think creating a safe place by enforcing or encouraging enforcing confidentiality, maintaining anonymity for those. It's all really, Lisa, let me just say it another way. It's all really about meeting the client where they are, and creating an environment that's conducive to them openly sharing and grieving their loss and finding closure.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you, Karen. And what we know about the abortion healing space is that most of the work being done is in groups. And so the way in which you're navigating this and sharing with us those three facets, if this is the main way we're going to deliver our services to clients, we need to have a structure or a construct that is well thought out, intentional, and like you said, keeping the client at the heart of it.
Yeah.
Great. And Heidi, moving to you, what makes these guidelines really important to you? How have you seen them be effective?
Yeah, so Lisa, I think for me, why I really value the ground rules is because it protects myself. It allows me to show up as a facilitator and not get in their junk, so to speak. So it's a place that I can be my best, and then I can help when things go off track. And so for me, the ground rules is really just my protection. And then the other piece why I really enjoy ground rules, it provides direction for the attendees. So often my experience, most people in my groups have not been able to establish healthy boundaries or confidentiality or rescuing. So those are such new concepts for them. And so we get to help provide that, Lisa, which is really a gift. So the more that I can, guide the ground rules, they're going to be able to receive more out of the group than they probably ever have before.
So you introduced a little bit of a different way of seeing this than Karen did, in that it helps you be the best version of yourself. So not only from Karen's perspective, that it really helps the client and serving them right where they are, but it helps you to be the best version of yourself. Wow.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Yeah. And I kind of think about that, Heidi, as I reflect on our mothering journey. When I tell my kids to be to bed at 9 o'clock, but then I tell them, oh, we'll just wait till 9:20. The next night, it's even harder to go to bed. And I'm like, it's 9 o'clock. And they're like, but you let me stay up yesterday till 9:20.
Yeah. And there's so much backpedaling, and backpedaling can be done, so our groups can go off topic. We can get in a restraint motion. And that's why the ground rules are so great. We have a tool that we can stop. Okay, y'all, I think we may have just stepped into rescuing. Let's kind of sit here and see how we went off track. So it's just a really great tool for myself, Lisa, because I can rescue all day long. And so it just helps me.
Oh, that's awesome. Thank you guys both for kind of introducing the why this is so important for both the facilitator and the client. It's really a protection for everyone involved, which is why this flows so nicely from ethics. Because if we're going to follow these guidelines from where we talked about our ethics need to be, this is just the perfect flow of our heart, the perfect flow of our mind, the perfect flow of our services to the clients that are coming our way. And so let's set this up before we break it down. We're going to give you another takeaway this month, and it's going to be all the guidelines that we feel are best practices for you to continue to implement for the first time, or review your guidelines with the ones that we're providing. But before we do that, Karen, would you talk to me about what went into the process of cultivating these guidelines for the group today?
Man, that's a great question. And it really has been a process. I mean, we change them all the time, as we experience different things. And that's how we've developed them over time. The abortion healing landscape is changing rapidly, and the clients that we serve are changing, present much differently than they did 15 years ago. And so we are just trying to be current, and provide, like Heidi said, I love that what you shared, Heidi, about how it protects you. And that's so true. I never even considered that before, but it really is about protecting not only the facilitator, but the people that are participating in the group. And so, I mean, the ones that we're going to share with you today, we just modified them again, based on some current recent experiences that we've encountered. So they're all suggestions.
I remember the first time we started talking about this, you had taken a culmination of a bunch of resources. And, overnight, I feel like we created this framework that because we didn't have anything. And it seems like maybe we've modified it once or twice before, but you were intentional with the team to modify it this last time. For those that are listening, I think it's important to walk you through this process because, we don't ever want to stay stagnant. And I think at times the abortion healing space and other spaces have found themselves kind of paralyzed to what was, and they don't keep evolving with what is. And that's what we just heard Karen say. And so, Karen, what kinds of things did you bring up in this conversation with the team? What kinds of things were, tossed back and forth? How did it evolve?
It was a great conversation. One of the recent experiences that our team had was of a facilitator, and I think a client as well, who didn't want to have their video on and didn't want to put their name in the, we do all of our groups virtually. So we were using a Zoom platform or something like that. And they didn't want to do it because they didn't feel safe given the recent changes in laws and potential prosecution. Right. And so, I mean, we have to think about that. There are states where abortion isn't legal anymore and they can be prosecuted for having one. And so you'll see when we put up this tool that we have contemplated and pivoted to provide maybe a multitude of different atmospheres in our virtual groups, maybe one that's all cameras on and names. They can make up a name for that matter, but or maybe it's co-ed groups. We've done co-ed Unraveled Roots groups and it was very successful. There might be clients that would prefer being in an abortion healing group with people of the opposite sex. And if that's what they're looking for, then we can pivot and provide that potentially. And then there's ones where there won't be any cameras on except for potentially the facilitator, or maybe not even the facilitator, just to maintain that's complete anonymity, right? We say that we will respect people's wish to be anonymous, and that's how we could do that. And so that's one of the conversations that we had when we were developing these new guidelines. And we have made arrangements for that.
That's great. So I hear you saying that from our anecdotal experience over the last 5 years, along with the experiences of each of you, whether it was at Support After Abortion or not, you took those into consideration, and together as a team, you developed or modified the ones that were already in existence. That's great. And so Heidi, I know you sat in on these conversations too, and having had the volunteer input, what kinds of things did you notice at this meeting as you were modifying the group or the guidelines?
Yeah. So one of the things we did, Lisa, we did lean on our current volunteers and we asked their feedback. And it was 100% unanimous that they are needed. All of the ones are needed. Are they all used all the time? No. But they did share, it does create structure that's needed within the group. And so that was really great feedback. And I think what I learned from that is we do what Karen said, we do need to keep modifying them, being able to shift with this landscape of abortion healing. So just being able to ask the questions, listen to the people that are doing it, reach across the table, Lisa. We have to learn from each other. But for right now, this is what really works well in our groups, and creating that structure, it just creates such a great outcome for these clients and providers that are sitting in these. I don't know if that answered your question, Lisa.
Beautiful. And so for those of you listening and you're like, I've had the ground rules down, we have guidelines, we have it, it's in working order. And you're like me, you don't want to pull out another document and have another meeting and try to figure this out. Please let me encourage you. It is in the best interest of our facilitators and our clients that are coming to us that you review this as frequently as you feel is necessary, at least every year. You pull this document out as you're preparing for the next year and you say, are these still accurate and necessary? Or is there others? Do certain things need to be tweaked? What have we learned throughout the year? What are our clients telling us? Like Heidi said, what are our volunteers telling us? Make this a best practice in your organization, that you're not just adopting the guidelines that we give you today and then they go into effect for the next 10 years. Make sure that you are constantly looking at them. Once we give you this document, make sure that you are taking this back to the group of folks that are running your groups and have conversations about them, discuss them. Do you have a certain clientele that needs a certain kind of guideline to protect them and to protect your facilitators? Don't do it blindly, and don't do it just because we said to. Do it because it is effective for your clients and effective for your facilitators. It is a tool to practice those ethics that we talked about, but also to help these groups run super smooth so that you can be your best and your clients can have the best experience. So without
Lisa,
further, go ahead, Karen.
Can I add something, Lisa? Because something
Yes.
else came up for me that I thought was really pivotal in our conversation when we were reviewing these, is that our guidelines before were like, don't do this, no cross talking, no. And we flipped it and made it a much more positive type of guideline. So it encourages people. And I think that was a major shift in the way that we're presenting these to the participants, our facilitators and the participants in our group. We never want to step forward with a negative approach to things. So, and I think you'll see that they're much more positive. And I thought that was really important.
So almost like stating, this is what we're expecting of you. Don't do that.
Yeah,
Okay.
exactly.
Awesome. Okay, so without further ado, we're going to share the document with you. And again, this is going to come in a following email. So if you're watching the recording, it'll be in a link. And we're going to really start talking and digesting what each of these means, further develop this context for you so that maybe you, if you're having any questions, you can understand why these are set the way that they are. So Karen, would you start with that confidentiality piece and break those down for us?
Sure. The first one has to do with creating a safe place and maintaining an atmosphere of confidentiality. And the last part of this, do you want me to read it, Lisa, or do you want me to read it?
Why don't you, and then give us your summary, perhaps.
Okay. It is essential that we create and maintain a safe space for group members to share personal thoughts, experiences, and opinions. What is said in the group stays in the group. This includes this last sentence is more for people that meet in person and public and maybe would be socializing with some of the people in their group. So this includes not repeating what was said in the group or talking about members in places where others may overhear. That would be a breach of confidentiality. And I think this is really important. We're asking people to really dive into and dig into some really traumatic stuff, right? And the whole concept of the group, which you stated earlier, Lisa, is really brilliant because it lets people know that they're not alone. And it helps us to get outside of ourselves and show compassion and empathy for others that have gone through a similar situation. So being able to openly share vulnerably, transparently, and honestly, I think is key to the success of a group.
Yeah. And let's stop there, Karen, because I want to also create a way in which our viewers can understand how we would go about communicating this with our clients. So for me, when I facilitate groups, I take my first session as a get to know you session, review the group rules, and potentially start whatever it is that we're going to start if there's time. How do you do your group rules or your guidelines?
That's probably a question better for Heidi because she's in the process of connecting people with groups. But from my understanding, and then Heidi, please chime in, is that we send out a welcome email when we have people that have committed to attending our groups. We include the guidelines in them. We ask them to review them prior to the first session, but we also go over them during the first session to see if there's any questions or anything that somebody wants to, ask about.
Okay.
Heidi, is that how we do it, Heidi?
Yeah, so we go over them in the first week, Karen and Lisa, so they're not put in the email because that can be a lot to take in the email. So we have shifted that, Karen. We used to do that. The other thing, Lisa, that I want to add and before I get to this, so I apologize, is we review them every week. So it's important with our facilitators that they establish that guideline weekly. It's not a long conversation. It's just, hey, let's do brief recap, remember confidentiality, remember your camera, remember A, B, C, D, F, G. But yeah, so in the welcome email, then the first week is when they go over with their facilitator what it's going to look like.
And I want you to hear that as you're watching this, because everybody's going to have their own style. Even just the three of us, we have our own style. It's shifted over the years. But for me, I would read it, or I'd have a group member read it. And then I would say, so here's what it looks like in group. Right? Here's just like Karen did. So if you guys are out in the mall and you see each other, this isn't about, oh, that's the woman that's in my support after abortion group, and she's going through abortion because, or the abortion healing group, because she's experienced abortion 3 times. You know, it would just be more of a friendly connection application to what this means, putting paper into practice. So that's how I deliver the guidelines in the groups that I lead, so that folks can see that this isn't rigid. Yes, we're going to follow them, but there's a reason why we're going to follow them, not just here it is, move on. So yeah. Karen, the second one.
Okay, for virtual groups, facilitators will explain the confidentiality protections the group will follow. These often include keeping Zoom video on and audio connected, potentially using headphones if you're not in a private place to ensure that audio is only heard by the participant, and not recording group sessions. There may be options for participants who want complete anonymity, and we talked about that earlier. So this is, again, to make sure. I've been in groups before, Lisa, facilitating groups before, where a man would walk behind, I'm assuming it was a husband, would walk behind his wife. Not that he was staring and looking at the camera, but he could have recognized somebody in that. And that's why it's important for us to be in a private place where no one can overhear our conversations. We prefer, or at least we did up until recently, just speculating about having videos off. I was always a fan of having videos on because I wanted to know who the participants were, who showed up, because a Zoom link can be shared, right? And I don't want somebody that hasn't applied or been selected to be in this potential abortion healing group to not have registered, right? To have not been done an intake. So that's why I have always been a fan of video on, but I'm starting to change my opinion as always happens based on the experiences that we have. So that's really what the second bullet point for confidentiality is all about, is being in a private place. Again, it's about creating an atmosphere where people will share the very thing that they don't want to share.
Right. And depending on the group, Karen, you know, I would read the room. And if there's 24-year-olds on my group call, I'm going to address those things based on what I know 24-year-olds see as our digital world, right? Versus a 60-year-old woman who has a very different digital understanding, right? And so we want to look to our group for how we're going to articulate this. So if I was speaking to a group of younger women, I might say, I know it's common for a lot of you to meet on your phone as you're driving to the next place that you're going to, maybe when you're waiting for an appointment. And I just want to remind you that what's going to be shared, how you're going to want to share, requires your undivided attention. And so this guideline is here to protect you and to protect those that are trying to share their most vulnerable secrets, perhaps. And if you're not in an environment that allows for that, it's going to make it very hard for you to be involved in the group.
And that's good.
Yeah. So we want to do that based on whoever our group members are. We want to break this down for them in the best way that we know how. Okay. Heidi, do you have anything to add for that second guideline under confidentiality?
No, I think Karen hit everything on the nail there. So just being open, being very open if somebody, so yes, Lisa, I do. So maybe as somebody is completing their intake and you may feel some hesitant, this is where that confidentiality may come into place. You know, is somebody not showing up every week? So just be really aware that this landscape has changed. These abortions are so recent. They're 5 days removed. And so having somebody turn on a camera right now just may not fit. So I think where I've been, Lisa, in this journey is be willing to bend and be willing to see if somebody really wants to be there, but there's just this fear of confidentiality. So I think that's what I would encourage with this piece and the confidentiality.
Okay. So to reflect on who it is that's reaching out for support, for your services, and to really discern whether or not it is a necessary step for your folks that are reaching out. Okay. So Karen, we're going to move on to respecting boundaries, our next topic here. And can you break those down for me?
Sure. Can we scroll up a little bit? Thank you. Actively listen to what others say. I always say this when it comes to listening. I listen with not only my ears, but my eyes. So much can be conveyed through body language. And that's one of the reasons I really love doing virtual groups, because I can see everybody at the same time. When we did things in person, we would typically set up the room in a circle, and we would have a co-facilitator, because when I'm engaging with somebody that's sharing, I'm looking at that person. I'm not looking at the response that the other participants have. So actively listening is really important, not only as a participant, but as a facilitator, because a facilitator's job is to help draw out whatever that person that's sharing is talking about, help to get to the bottom of it, what's underneath it. And what's really important is to check your judgments or your agenda. If you have an agenda for your participants in your group, or have judgments about perhaps the decision that they made, we need to leave those at the door, because then we're not leading with compassion. All right. So it's really client for me when I'm facilitating a group, and I do debrief afterwards. So there is an element where I want to make sure that I'm being the best facilitator that I can, but my focus is really on the participants in the group and creating an environment that's conducive for them to heal.
Yeah. And Karen, as you're speaking, I'm just reminded that most of us listen to respond, right? And so this active listening thing could be a very new thing for the clients and for you as a facilitator. And so some of the tools that I might recommend with this guideline is, if you need to, and you're on a Zoom call, keep a notepad. And when things are triggered in your thought because of someone's share, write it down so that you can then continue to engage. Or if you're in person and we're working out of a workbook, write a little note to yourself so you don't become fixated on that one thing, and you can truly listen to the ways in which the other people in the group are sharing. But we our nature is to listen to then have a response back, instead of listening to hear what people really want to share with us. It's so good, Karen. What's the second one?
So this is a great example of how we've pivoted in our language when it comes to the guidelines. Our guidelines before, the second bullet point was called "Don't rescue," right? And we've reframed it in this way: allow space for others to speak. This includes letting one person speak at a time, holding silence to give a speaker time to think and share. Hold silence when somebody becomes emotional while they're sharing. Hold a silence, because interrupting is just going to deflate that entire experience for that participant, right? It's going to interfere with their ability to really be in the moment with whatever it is that's going on with them. So we want to definitely allow for silences. And that includes not interrupting and allowing everyone to have a turn to share.
So good. And we do more damage when we talk over somebody, when we want to speak our mind through things. There's people that maybe for the very first time, Karen, and I know you've had clients like this, that are sharing in a public setting about their abortion experience, perhaps about their sexual abuse experience, other trauma, relationship difficulties. And when they're in the midst of sharing something for the very first time, and somebody goes, "Oh, that happened to me," at times it affirms what has always happened to them, that their words are not as important, that their voice isn't nearly as important. And so as facilitators, cultivating that space to say and do what you want to do in this group, you have got to protect this. And you're going to have clients that have never learned the rules of engagement like this. I mean, some of you might be going, yeah, that's, normal, respectful conversation. But for those of you who are seasoned facilitators, that people get energized in these conversations and lose sight that there's anybody else in the room, and at times will, and just need that kind reminder. Remember, we're listening to Melissa right now. We'll come to you when it's time. Karen, do you have anything you'd like to add to that?
Just that this goes for facilitators as well. Facilitators can rescue if they see that a participant is looking uncomfortable or something like that. So this is not only just for the clients, but it's for us as well. And so I just wanted to put that out there.
Yeah, we're guilty of it too, right?
Yeah.
Oh, so good. All right, let's go to the third one.
How about Heidi? Can Heidi jump in here?
I feel like sure. You want to do this, Heidi? You can do the next one.
I was good listening, but thank you, Karen. I will now step in. Okay, so support others with trying to fix. And so this includes not giving advice, not rescuing, like giving a tissue or a hug, that's more in person. Supplying an answer for somebody, which I didn't really think about that ever. This can interfere with their healing process. So Lisa, for me, it really goes together with what Karen just talked about. You know, we're not there to fix anybody as a facilitator. And it goes back to what you just said, Lisa. Many of our participants never have experienced these type of healthy boundaries. They are used to people telling them what to do. They are used to people speaking down to them. And that is something that we as a facilitator get to show them a different way. Not that we won't jump in and try to fix something off and on, because we are all broken at the same time, but the more awareness we have for it, we will let them be able to walk through their pain and be able to maybe put some pieces together. So this one is really an important one. I remember Lisa sitting in a sexual healing group, and somebody got up and gave me a tissue, and it stopped the whole conversation. And it just stopped it. And then I forgot what I was even saying. So what that may be virtually is somebody shares something and all of a sudden you go, oh, it's okay. You know, it's really okay. Thank you for sharing, instead of allowing the silence to take place. And so just being aware that rescuing can show up in very different ways. But for me, it's when I'm trying to fix somebody, Lisa. So I really like this one. So Karen, thanks for asking me to read this one.
Yeah. And I love that you brought up the tissue, because I was just thinking about my rules in group. In in-person groups, I put a box of tissues in the center of the circle. And the very first group under this guideline, I say, by no means is anyone allowed to give anyone tissues. They are here. And if you need them, you can get them for yourselves. And it's not meant to be rude or incompassionate. It's meant for us to be able to assert our needs in a safe space. Mm-hmm. So often the folks that we're serving don't have the capacity to tell us what they need. They often have struggled to really identify what those things are. So if their nose is running and their eyes are tearing up, they know that that tissue box is there and they can grab it when they're ready. And like Heidi said, then it's on their own, will to do that. And it's not a distraction from a group member getting up and being uncomfortable. And it's also for the other group members to know that it's not their job. Their job is to come to this group and find healing for themselves and be kind while they're here, but not to enable or be codependent or fix the other people in the group. So I love that you brought that up, Heidi. Thank you for that. All right. Bullet number 4, Heidi, you keep going.
Oh, when sharing your opinion, refrain from trying to persuade others to agree with your opinion. That's a good one. Differences of opinions are welcomed and respected. You know, Lisa and Karen, for me, I have learned so much through our after abortion line clients. They're not where I am, and I'm not where they are. I am 40 years removed from my trauma. They are still sitting in that moment. It's 5-6 months removed from their trauma. What worked for me may not ever work for them. So it's really important for myself. Again, I'm going to go back to fix it, to hear something and thinking, man, that didn't work for me. I should tell them that. I need to tell them that didn't work for me. Lisa, they have to figure it out on their own. They have to be able to do different things to see what's going to work for them. One, they have negative thoughts. One may do really well with playing music. One may do really well sitting in silence. One may do really well praying. And that's okay. We don't have to push our way onto other people. So this really just protects, again, their own healing journey so that they can find out what works for them. So this is a good one too.
Yeah. And what's coming up to me just to illuminate this is like when we have folks in group that are having a rocky relationship. And most of the time that is, hand in hand with their abortion healing experience. And they're like, I slept with him last night. And the whole group, you almost hear it go, oh, why'd you do that? And it's like, whoa, time out. And that's for us as facilitators to say, time out, right? everyone is on their own journey. It is not for us to decide how folks should go through their journeys. We all are going to make different decisions on this journey. Let's relook at this. And I might even go back to the group member who heard those things and say, what was it like to hear the group not happy with your choice? And then she'll share. And then the group receives that to say, oh man, I had no idea. Right. And they think they're being just friends or friendly. Right. And this goes for, I went to a, I don't know, meditation garden this weekend, and maybe it's a Christian run group. And we want to be careful not to throw our judgment in on that, and make sure that we listen. And what was it like for you? And what did you get from it? And what, the client's going to come to their own consensus on that experience, but it's not for us. Remember ethics last week, to impose our religious or political views on the folks that we're serving.
Yeah.
Okay, Karen, back to you. The number 1, 2, 3, 4, number 5.
I'm sitting here chuckling because as we're reviewing these guidelines, many of them were created out of us making mistakes as facilitators, and so it's all good. We learn as we go. The last one that Heidi just shared, and this one, keep your sharing focused on your own thoughts and feelings, use I or me statements, really speaks to me that everyone grieves differently. And it's so important as participants and as a facilitator to not compare people's journey, but to be able to relate to it. And that's where this whole I or me statements come to, right? That keeps the focus on ourselves. We share our experience, hope, and strength, right? And relate to what everyone else has said as well. So I think that's really important. That goes with the trying not to fix somebody and the cross talking and giving advice kind of guidelines that we have in here as well.
And it's also very safe language when we're saying you should or you shouldn't or you, right? It's very kind of condescending, and it doesn't allow for a safe space when it's like, my experience was so-and-so, or I felt when I did this, so-and-so. So it's very kind of safe for everyone to share their own experiences, but not push everybody's agenda. Karen, the last one.
Do not discuss members who are absent. At times, participants, we know that emergencies happen. It's at times people can't attend the group, and we're not going to discuss them when they're not there.
Great. That's awesome. And that's easy to kind of really swallow. So we're going to move into the last category now. And Heidi, I'm going to call on you. And these are really important, these next ones, because so many of our clients have not ever either been in a group, or they've not ever really been called to the standard of commitment and consistency. And so as you hear these, process it through a way in which this is not the standard of practice for many of our clients that we're serving. Go ahead, Heidi.
Yeah, so this next one, and commit to your healing and to the group. So we start with attend each session, show up on time, complete the homework and journaling, and participate in the group discussion. Share from your heart, let the walls down. This takes time and trust, and may be easier for some and more challenging for others. Lisa, the whole root of this one for me is it takes a commitment. They have to be, I have to be willing to sit in this place. I have to be willing to make the commitment. I have to know that I am worth this journey. And so if you have a participant who is showing up and, they're not doing the work, they didn't do their video, they didn't do their book, it's another question to ask them, maybe off camera, but they need to know that this is a commitment. And so establishing that for them in advance, when we provide our information to our clients, we let them know the expectation, 6 weeks, this is the time, so they know in advance. So this just reiterates that expectation. And I think for me, when I share this one, Lisa, I just let them know that they're so worth it. It may sound like a lot, 6 weeks, that sounds like a lot, but you are so worth this. And so for me, this is a little personal, as you can hear it in my voice. It takes a commitment, but they need to know that they are worth that commitment too.
And this isn't to be confused with you're required to talk the whole time, or when we hit that like trigger space for you, you're required to tell us why you're crying. That's not what this is calling our clients to. This is calling our clients to be on time, show respect to the other group members, do the homework. If you feel like sharing, please do. If it's more of an open-ended, less maybe emotionally driven question, please participate. Or at least, let me know where you're at prior to the group so that I can be very responsive to the needs that you have. But this isn't like you have to talk every 10 minutes. Every time I ask a question, you have to respond. That is not the expectation, but you will know the difference in the client that's just coming because they feel like they have to, or whatever they're showing up 20 minutes late to the group, these sort of things, versus the client that's ready, prepared, and interested in being with you. For that session. Thank you, Heidi. How about the second one? And then we'll go back to Karen.
So the second one is trust in the process. Everyone grieves differently, so don't compare your progress to somebody else's. I think we just keep reiterating this, Lisa. Where I was, 25 years ago, and where this next person that has been 5 years ago, we need to affirm them that everybody's in a different place.
Yeah,
your level of grieving is just right for you. And so for me, this one does take reiterating during the process. And so that's really normal for people. Why can't I get past this? She's past this one. Hey, remember, we all grieve differently. You're okay where you're at. It takes time, so this for me is another great one, just to reiterate, to stay in your lane and, let this person grieve the way that they do. So that's a good one too. They're all good.
Yeah. And sometimes the pain is so great. I like to use the metaphor of the shaken 2-liter soda bottle. So often when our clients connect with us, that 2-liter bottle has been shaken and stirred and all sorts of things by something. And the top came off, they exploded, they came to you, they're looking for the help that they need. And now here they are entering the group, and it's not nearly as maybe, bursting out of them at this point. And so reminding them that as they take this journey, it might get harder before it gets easier, but to remember what compelled them to come in the first place and allow the process to take shape. Another thing I say a lot of times to clients is that this stuff, this memory, these experiences are stored somewhere, and we've either learned to go under them, over them, around them, and we're now trying to go through them. And so it might be slimy, it might be rough, it might be dark, but it's something that they've never experienced. And so to be able to trust a new way, because the ways that they've been doing it haven't been working for them. And the way that we're trying to offer them is actually showing them how to release it for the very first time, which could be overwhelming. So to be mindful of that as we're explaining this one. Karen, let's take it to number 3.
Lisa, that was so good. I just want to add one thing, that bottle, the top comes off and it sprays all over the place. Some clients are trying to put that lid back on.
Yes.
Right? Because now they've said it out loud, and now it's like, oh my gosh, what have I just done? I've exposed myself. Let's put this lid back on the bottle. So I just wanted to throw that out there because people probably experience that. All right, number 3, please note that this support group does not replace professional therapy. If you are currently in therapy, we recommend that you notify your therapist and that they support your participation in this support group. Yeah, that's really important. We know that these support groups, lay-led support groups, are not not professional therapy. They're not professional counseling. And so if a therapist is working with somebody and they really think that it's best for them just to continue with their therapy and perhaps later engage in a support group, then we want to honor and respect that. And we just recommend that the participant let their therapist know what they're considering doing and get their input. We don't want to do more harm.
Right. And this is a flow from our ethics, right? Beautiful. Karen, how about the next one?
Okay. Each group session is valuable to your personal healing and to the support and to the group support. Your facilitator will inform the group of the number of allowed absences. So for us in a 6-week group, we know that emergencies happen and we allow 1 missed group, but we also require that a missed session be made up before the next group meets in the following week. And the reason for that is that most resources are build on each other. The chapters build on each other. We don't want somebody to miss something and not have the ability to go through that to then re-engage with the group the following week. And we want them all to be in the same place and had the opportunity to go through the material with somebody. So as a facilitator, I would do a makeup session with them and schedule it before the next group meets.
That's awesome. Yeah, I think that, and I think it determines based on your client, how you would do this. You know, if I've had clients that were very self-motivated and would do the work, and then we would cultivate a 20-minute summary phone call, where others would need the longer time to process because perhaps it was the grief and loss section or the anger section or whatever it was, and they needed more time to kind of connect. Okay, Karen, or sorry, Heidi, would you take the last one?
So we have, do not use alcohol or drugs while preparing for and participating in the group session. So this can interfere with your ability to feel and grieve and can create an unsafe space for others. If you need help in this area, please contact your facilitator outside of the group. Your facilitator can connect you to help, to get you the help you deserve. So Lisa, this one really came because we struggled with this, you know, so it is not uncommon to have coping mechanisms for your grief. It's so normal. So allowing a safe place to know that you're safe here, you know, you don't need to use a coping mechanism. We're gonna be here for you. That can be completely foreign to them, you know, and so this is just, it allows them to be completely present. It allows them to feel and just allows whatever breakthrough that is going to take place will help that take place. So it's an important one in my book. So it's just, it can sometimes be awkward for our facilitators to do this one, but at the same time, it's always received beautifully, Lisa.
Yeah. And again, it was something that came out of our own experience. So because the team is committed to constantly evaluating the effectiveness of these guidelines, we were able to shape these towards the experiences we were having. And we felt like this happened enough with great severity that it deserved to be captured in words and delivered to the group. You know, as I'm pondering before we enter into questions, and I want to throw this at both of you, Heidi and Karen, I've been on the receiving end of a facilitator correcting my action because I've been late to group, or I didn't feel like I was participating, or they saw that I was distracted in my thoughts. And it's always been, it hasn't been personal. My humanity, my trauma, my pain wants to take it personal, but my facilitators have been so good about saying, Lisa, I want to remind you that the group rules are for everybody's benefit. It's not, you know, me coming and attacking you, but remember, we reviewed the group rules during the first session. We're constantly trying to keep ourselves to these standards. I just want to let you know that it appears that you're struggling with this one. And I want to know what's going on and how you might be able to fix it for the next session. And even though I took it personal, there was nothing that I could connect it to the facilitator because she was just doing her job and really holding me accountable. As you think about my story and the ways in which you've had to do that correction with our clients, can you help me understand how you might have delivered that in a way and what kind of some of the responses might have been?
You want me to go first?
Sure.
Okay. First of all, I'm going to say it's not comfortable, right? Even though we're the facilitator and we're trained to do this, it's not comfortable. So don't expect it to be. I prayed for years to be comfortable with being uncomfortable, but I think it's what you just demonstrated, Lisa. It's leading with the heart, right? We're not villainizing these people for breaking a guideline. We want them to have the best experience possible. And for us to go to them and say, hey, listen, I just really want this experience to be great for you. And this is something that I noticed. What do you think we can do differently so that this, whatever it could be, right? And I think it really comes from where you start the conversation.
That's so good. And Karen, I feel like you are an example of the commitment. Like after the group is over, you are going to find that client and you are committed to having that conversation. You're not putting your head in the clouds or in the sand. You're doing it. What inside of you inspires you to be that committed?
Because that's where growth comes from, right? We all make mistakes. Mistakes are great. They're an opportunity to grow, you know? And so I'm just committed to growing myself personally and helping others to grow.
Wow.
It's my
So
passion, right?
it starts with
Whatever it
you.
is, whether it's any kind of trauma or any kind of difficulty that somebody's having in their life, it's just about, yeah, it's
That's
about doing the
great.
next right thing, right?
Heidi, how about you?
Yeah, so Lisa, I think for me, as we, most of us have led groups before, it's, as Karen says, it's always uncomfortable. Making that phone call, having that conversation, my outcome has always been appreciative, Lisa. And I share, I'm really nervous to talk to you about this. This is what happened this week in group. And I just care too much about you to not have this conversation. And so then reiterating, remember how we talked about, A, B, C, D, F, G and our ground rules, so I just want to, I know that you can do this and I just want to make sure we have a conversation. And so I'm so stinking nervous every time. And the outcome is always, thank you for having this conversation with me. Are they still maybe perturbed? Are they still, good golly, what just happened? But they show up again. And that's the beautiful piece. They can, like you said, Lisa, they were able to connect. This wasn't anything with me. This was some other junk that kept surfacing. And nobody has ever held me accountable like this. This is kind of cool. So that's been my experience, Lisa. And it's so hard, but it's so worth it.
Yeah. And we didn't plan this question. So I just wanted to kind of just really firm those of you who are listening that may have not or may not be as good as what you're hearing Karen and Heidi speak to. But they know that the success of their group is counting on it. And so if they want week 2, 3, and 4 to go smooth, they're committed to the safety of this group for all clients involved, that they're willing to take the risk of having this conversation with a client. I know many of us on this call will say things like, well, I just thought that maybe I'd give her time to adjust, or I just thought that maybe it was a one-time offense. No, if it shows up, it is important that we address it always. Sometimes you might feel like it's an innocent thing that you just might want to reiterate it back to the group instead of individualizing it, but don't ever put your head in the sand or the head in the clouds, because it will come back to bite you. And I know some of you are chuckling inside or having these revelations right now where you're like, I hated that group because I let him get away with that. And they didn't even know it. They didn't even know that they were getting away with anything, but we weren't holding them to the level of care that we had requested at the beginning. So perhaps some of you, after hearing this, might be newly reinvigorated to trying groups again because you've been scared of them, because they've been out of control for you. And I would submit to you that it's because you didn't have the guidelines and the facilitation to be able to bring the group to the safety place it needed for your facilitators and your clients. So we're going to take a time out right here, and I'm going to turn it back over to Kylie, and Kylie's going to facilitate some of your questions. And so without further ado, Kylie, take it over.
Hi, Lisa. Thank you so much. There's just been a tremendous outpouring of validation and grateful attitudes about this conversation and what it's bringing up in people's minds. The first person I'd like to invite to talk is Chris Rainey, who's a dear colleague of ours. He's brought up a really great point about holding anonymity when you're doing in-person healing groups. So I'd like for him to come on camera, Chris, if that's okay with you.
I'm here.
Yay. Hey, Chris.
Hi, how are y'all doing?
Good. Share with us a little bit more about how we need to be sensitive about having healing groups in the same church that people attend.
I don't recommend it at all. The first group that I facilitated was at the church, and I recommended we not meet at the church, but we did anyway. And sure, and they said, well, it'll be fine, it'll be secure. Oh, okay. Well, there was a women's group meeting at the same time. They were upstairs and I couldn't even find them. So good. But where we were was down a hall, and there was no reason for anybody to walk past that hall. And we had people walking past the hall, past the door. So I strongly encourage that when we do have a group where there's one person, 2, 3, 6, 8, that it not be held at the church, because inquiring minds will want to know. And, they'll walk past the door and just happen to glance over there, and, then the secret's out. But anonymity within the group is extremely important. And they need to know that where they are safe. And however that is done, and again, it's best done if the meetings are not held at the church, the sponsoring church.
Great. Thank you, Chris. I see already Wanda Fleming saying she totally agrees. Jeannie says the same thing. She's had the same experience. So thank you for bringing this up when we talked about confidentiality. Lisa, I'm going to put you in the hot seat next. We've had lots of conversation within our chat box about having signed agreements. So signed agreements on group guidelines. Some people have said that they've done this successfully. We have Wendy and Deborah here who indicated that they have had a lot of success with this. And then other folks who have said that they're not sure how to discern the need for anonymity with policies at their center that require a request for services to be completed with a person's full name.
I kind of don't see an issue with either or. I think what we're seeking, if we look underneath the surface, is we're seeking a commitment. And I think that a commitment is only as good as the people that hold us to that commitment. So perhaps we're doing a Zoom group and we're looking for everybody's commitment. If you feel like you need to get everybody to say yes, because those are the group dynamics in the chat, you feel like everybody needs to verbally say something, or it needs to be in writing, or you just see that they're showing up and they're continuing to abide by the rules, that's action. So I think it just depends on the kind of dynamics that you're seeking. I don't know that I have an opinion either way. But I know that the commitment comes when my clients show up and when they're offering themselves in the group. So if you feel like your clients might be the client that said, I never saw that, or they might go, you never reviewed that with me, then maybe the signature comes into play. But then even then, what does it do for you? If you go back and you say, you signed this commitment, what does that mean for your client? And so I would just say, what is the motive behind it? What are you really trying to accomplish? And is it the best way to do it? Or is there another way to seek the commitment from the member that's attending your group?
Great. So as a follow-up, Selena has recommended that she's had success in a church setting where she held the meeting during off hours. So periods of time when the church was not in use and they were able to achieve confidentiality at that time. Question came up, 35% of our participants in today's call do not have group ground rules in place. And so what are maybe 2 or 3 symptoms that they might experience that could be triggers for them to say, guidelines would be helpful?
Who do you want that question to go to, Kylie?
Lisa, you.
Well, I'd love Karen to help me with this, because I feel like being the guru that she is, I feel like, Karen, what would be the first one for you?
So let me make sure I understand the question. What is the thinking behind not having group guidelines? Is that the question?
The question is 35% of our participants today do not have group guidelines in place. So they're holding groups, they don't have guidelines. What are some of the symptoms that they might recognize as being a prompt to put guidelines in place?
Yeah. What's your top one, Karen?
I'm sorry?
What's the top negative thing that's happened in your groups?
People shut down and don't participate.
Yeah. Yeah, I would say it's always focused on the client or the facilitator. The client shows a negative behavior, the facilitator, starts growing resentment towards this group. The group doesn't feel like it's connected. And people are dreading coming to the group instead of feeling the safety of the group.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I would just be curious to ask the 35% who said that they don't have guidelines, what's the reason behind that? I'd love to hear from one of them. And how successful have their groups been?
That's good.
Great. Well, we did a poll in the beginning of our time together today. I thought it'd be helpful to share, and that is that the most common problems that our participants are having, this might make you feel just a teeny bit more normal, is monopolizing the conversation, attending all the sessions, giving advice, and filling silence. The least common issues that you all are dealing with is group participants interrupting, group participants not digging deep, and group participants who are not coming to group prepared. So they are coming prepared, they're digging deep, and they are letting people finish their thoughts. So that's fantastic. And then interestingly, more than half of our participants do not require attendees to miss a session. So I thought that was, or do not require them to make up a session that they've missed. So I thought that was really interesting as well, Karen.
That is interesting. I would love, so, well, I don't want to, Kylie and I are working on a project to find out how much progress people made through the healing journey. That would be a telling question, right? As if people have missed groups, was their experience as excellent? Was there as much progress achieved if they missed sessions and didn't make them up?
Absolutely. Well, we have had a great session today. I want to announce that our September session is facilitation in action. So Lisa, you want to give a little plug for that, and then we'll say goodbye.
Yeah, so what seems to be transpiring just from last month all the way on is helping you put these ethics into practical next steps for you. And so today we really created the construct for groups. How do you have guidelines that protect the client and the facilitator? And next month, we're really going to talk about what is it really like to be a facilitator? On paper, it looks one way, but when you're really in action, what does it look like? What are some of the things we kind of demonstrated a little bit about how we would break a group, up and say, hey, time out, or we need to discuss group guidelines again. But what does it really look like when you're doing your life and your clients are doing yours and technology fails and all of these things? We're going to really bring to light what it looks like to actually be the facilitators that you all are, and how to really be the best version of yourself despite some of these uncontrollable things. And how ethics really can inform how we move into those places. So we're really looking forward to it. And of course, it'll come extremely informed by our anecdotal experiences, our research experiences, and hopefully elevate your practices so you can continue to serve clients in the next level and continue to adopt new and different standards. So really excited for that. Heidi and Karen, thank you so much for enjoying this conversation with me today and sharing your wisdom and insights. You guys are always so wonderful, and I appreciate all that you do for support after abortion, and for all of you for taking the time out of your day. We're so grateful you were with us, and we'll see you next time. Take care.